One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. There we go. Welcome everybody to Talking Niagara with me, Peter Giblett, and him, Dave Wheeler. Morning, Dave. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good. Your voice seems out of sync.
Oh, so does yours, actually.
Weird. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So let's kind of dive right in. Veteran ABC News correspondent Terry Moran was suspended on Sunday. I read this article and okay, so he put up a post that was kind of untasteful, but it's the White House that's kind of trying to rule the roost, saying, "Hey, suspend the guy." I'm thinking to myself, isn't it ABC's role to determine whether they suspend or whatever their employees? And I have to wonder, part of me says, hey, grow a backbone, ABC, ignore what the president says.
No, I disagree. And the reason why I put this here is that Moran he lost his journalism ethic. He lost it completely. He put out there his subjective opinion for the whole world to see that, in his opinion, Trump and Miller are full of hate and that they thrive on hate. Not only is that irresponsible, you have to prove something like that. If you're going to propose something like that and they are full of hate, then you must do the groundwork. You have to go into the science. You have to dig it up, and you have to say, this is my opinion on why the Miller and Trump are full of hate, and this is why, and this is the scientific case I can bring to you. This is the historical expense. But what he did is he lost it. He lost it.
Yeah.
And this is an example of why the left will not triumph over the right. And sadly enough, it is the legacy media doing subjective things like this, opinions, that is so unprofessional that they weaken themselves incredibly. That news agency, ABC or whatever it is weakened incredibly because of that. He should be thrown out and fired for what he did, because that is not good journalism. If you are an opinion columnist, maybe you could say something like that, but even then you have to come up with something. What he did is he slurred the president and Miller like that, and subjectively, without evidence, without due process. He was a terrible journalist at that point. And who is ever going to believe his ability to be a journalist ever more? Every time I look at Moran and he comes up with his Moran, whatever his name is, comes up with an article, I will always remember that he gave in to his emotions and he lost his ability to be a journalist. He should be thrown out. That's my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, so just in case you didn't know, Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, is who we were talking about there, and of course, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, what had happened is this guy was a veteran. Now, I'll put it this way here. Terry Moran, a veteran, right, was suspended by ABC News for doing what he did. And he put it on the platform X, and he put on that Trump and Miller are world-class haters.
He did take the post down later on, though, but arguably too late.
No, it was stupid. Of course, as soon as he puts it up, it's going to get noticed. He knows it's going to get noticed.
Of course.
Now, was he drunk? Had he done one more too many lines of cocaine or something? That was not only was it unprofessional, the whole idea. Now no one can trust this guy. Any time that he writes anything, no one can trust him, because he gives into his emotions and he has strong feelings, and he cannot be He cannot be relied upon to have an objective point of view as a journalist should. He just ruined his career, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. And that was foolish that he did that. But at least he outed himself as a insincere journalist.
Well, yeah,
and what they've done actually is they fed the monster.
Yeah,
like they've given Trump ammunition.
But however, Vice President J.D. Vance has posted a defense of Miller on X, stating that Miller is motivated by a love of the country and the ABC should apologize.
Yes, the ABC should apologize. Should apologize in spades, and they should get rid of Moran because of his unprofessionalism. We as the people who rely on journalism now cannot rely on ABC. They have shown who they are, or at least one of their main journalists has shown who they are. And this guy was able to get in an interview with Trump in April.
Yeah,
so. And not only that, but they gave the Trump. Now we're having a great deal of difficulty with the Trump administration because they're sidelining and marginalizing the press. Then you've got a guy like this who says what he did, that Miller and Trump are world-class haters, and gives you nothing more. That's his opinion, right? And then the Trump administration will say, look, do you really call that professional journalism? You don't. What you call that is whatever that syndrome they call it, the Trump syndrome, whatever they call it. So I would say that Moran was a moron. And he should be tossed from his job because what he's let us down. He's let us down. The public who need solid journalism, has let us down. ABC should get rid of him and apologize for his lack of objectivity and loss of and lack of journalism credibility. And that's the reason why I put it there. That's the reason why I put it there in the for us to discuss. And this is the problem we're having in the United States. We have two sides of the media. We have the Fox type media who will see nothing wrong with Trump. And then you see the other side of the media who will invent things like they're evil haters and things like that, which make no sense at all. If you want to make a case against Trump, then you do it with facts.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. But there's a lot of, the views out there don't have facts associated with them mostly.
No, they don't. And now you've just given the Trump administration ammunition.
Yeah.
Ammunition to say that the legacy media is lousy and it's driven by Trump hate syndrome, whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if ABC was smart, they would say apologize, dump him for good, get rid of him, and bring in somebody else, somebody that is can read the room objectively.
Yeah, but even so, even in reading the room objectively, it is still right for a journalist to make statements opposing Donald Trump, for example.
In an opinion piece, yeah. If you have evidence that he's done something wrong, yeah, you can point that out.
Yeah, exactly.
You can report it.
Because with every politician, and it's the same whether it's a councillor on a local council, the mayor, Mark Carney, or Donald Trump, we have the right to criticize them.
Well, right now, how many people are criticizing, say, Mike Strange? He's had a domestic assault on his coming up next week in court.
Yeah.
For now, people are withholding judgment most of the time on him until that court case is being come to term.
Yeah.
So people are not going to judge him. They're a bit worried about it because of the nature of the assault charge, but they're not. You and me and most other people are not going to be too judgmental at this particular time until it comes out of the court.
Yeah, I'm not even worried. You know, I know that Gary Wilkins is basically, he's going to go up to the court to listen to the whole proceedings. I will be waiting for the judgment and what the judge will say.
Well, it's already been delayed once. Maybe it'll be delayed again. Mike didn't even come to court that time. It was delayed. But the problem is, do you now, a journalist now start writing a hate issue thing against Mike Strange?
No.
Do you do that? No, you wait.
It's irresponsible to do so. And in fact, you know, as I say, until the thing is decided, let it go.
Does the journalists in St. Catharines Standard, Niagara Falls Review, now lay judgment on him and write an article, an opinion on how bad a dude he is? Do they do that?
No.
Well,
and neither would
Moran should learn something like that. He's a journalist, and he did not learn that first lesson, right? Evidence.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Israel is accused of the gravest of war crimes. And the interesting thing is, they start this article, the BBC starts this article by saying, even wars have rules. They don't stop soldiers killing each other, but they're intended to make sure that civilians caught up in the fighting are treated humanely and protected from as much danger as possible. And this, at the world headquarters of the International Committee of Red Cross in Geneva, it has those words blazoned on the glass rotunda there. Even wars have rules.
Even wars have rules, and yet Israel is not being held at account for what it's doing in Gaza. It won't let any journalist in. It won't let any other agency into Gaza. It will if they are with the IDF and showing things only the IDF wants them to see. But even that is limited because what the Gaza has become is one big rubble pit.
Yeah.
And we find that if they pass by a building, they might smell the reek of decomposing bodies in the rubble. So Israel does not want any journalists in Gaza at all. It's restricted all journalists from Gaza. It's restricted all kind of information coming out of that. 187 journalists, most of them were Palestinians, have been killed reporting on this, and that's no accident. They target journalists, obviously. They don't want the what's going on there to come on out. Now, it is a real big problem for every different country right now. How are they going to be judged when this is all over? What countries did stand up to Israel? Which ones just kind of melted back in the background? Who did what? The United States will be judged very terribly on this because they are allowing this to happen every day.
Well, the interesting shift here is actually the shift of the media, because until a couple of months ago, the BBC would have been pro-Israel, wouldn't have published this article.
Yeah, the BBC was very, very reluctant to be fair in its reporting. It wanted to go on the side of Israel from the very beginning, and it was criticized for being too Israeli centered.
Yeah.
That saying that they're not nearly as bad as the U.S. agencies. Every U.S. agency is Israel centered. Basically, they only report the minimal amount of Palestinian side that they have to. So CNN, ABC, Fox, whatever, particularly Fox. Fox isn't really a news agency. It's, I don't know what that is, but yeah, the other two are poor. Like ABC and NBC, CBC, CNN are poor when it comes to reporting on things like in the Middle East, because they have, I don't know, they're pressured by the Israeli lobby, and they're not going to want to stir up any controversy at all, so they'll stay in the background, and they'll report what they.
Well, according to this article, they're saying 14,500 Palestinian children in Gaza have been killed by January of this year, according to UNICEF.
That means probably about 2.5 to 3 times as many of that have been maimed.
Yeah. And
maimed. That's for life now.
Yeah. And that, and they're showing here, of course, pictures of people holding up empty cooking pans, or kids holding up empty cooking pans.
Yes. So the whole article is what do individual countries do right now? They know that the rules of war have been broken. They know that that individuals in Netanyahu's government has said that they're going to use food as leverage.
Yeah.
That they're going to use food and supplies and medical. They've destroyed just about every medical thing going. Recently, they stopped a ship coming with supplies that had Greta Thunberg on it. Of course, the Israeli military boarded it. Any amount of ships that try to make it to Gaza with humanitarian aid will be stopped by the Israeli military. Nobody wants you to know what's going on in there. Nobody wants you to know how much food is in there. It is.
I'm wondering.
It is a terrible thing, and they're going to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
And they're going to hope that a year from now or a year from after all the hostilities have stopped, that people will forget about it. Well, people are already forgetting about Gaza because it's in the news every day, and one outrage after another. Another 10 kids killed here, another 27 people killed here, 30 people killed there. It's getting to the point where who could absorb that kind of bad news all day long?
And how many are dying of starvation right now?
There are people dying of starvation and children that are hungry.
Yeah.
People that are hungry because even if they have enough food there, they're moving it around here and there. You can't get it unless you go over here. You have to come to this place, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's place, where they're going to distribute food. And if you walk a little bit off the path, you're going to get shot to death.
Yeah.
By trigger happy IDF soldiers. It's a miserable thing. Nobody has the courage to face up to Israel, and I don't know why. Look, you're using our weapons, and you're killing all these people. Why? And then when we do send money for food and stuff, it can't be used to be bought for food, because you're saying, there's all kinds of food in there already. So we're not going to let the borders open. We're not going to let any journalists in there. We're not going to let any diplomats in there. We're not going to let anybody in there to see what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. So what they're saying here in this article is, in Europe, there is now a widely held belief, as in Israel, that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is prolonging the war to safeguard not to safeguard Israelis, but to preserve the ultra-nationalist coalition that keeps him in power.
Yeah, that's basically, as long as the war goes on, he's protected also from corruption charges. He's got a raft of corruption charges against him, and this isn't the first time. And he tried to change the Constitution so he could not be charged with corruption charges, and it failed. but by a close vote, 11-10 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, so as soon as that war ends, his government ends, or at least that's his fear. So the longer the war happens, the longer he can maintain himself, because that's Israeli law. As long as there's a war going on, you can't have an election.
Yeah.
Kind of like Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the moment, a lot of anger, of course, against Netanyahu right now in much of the world.
Lots of anger against Netanyahu right in Israel right now.
But I have to say also, when I've been looking around Facebook and when I would look around Western, you look at American thought, etc., you're seeing still a lot of anti-Arab feeling, pro-Israeli. Israel has done nothing wrong, kind of thing. And you see posts,
because
like this every day.
Well, because the amount of power that the Israeli lobby has over the American press, I think that I don't know, the power of the Israeli lobby in the United States is vast. If you start reporting truthfully, but it happens to be against Israel, you're going to get a lot of trouble. You got a lot of people coming after you, and they're going to slur you in any way possible. They're going to start calling you an anti-Semite. I think the New York Times is still pretty much a Jewish newspaper. I think Jewish people own it and operate it. Not to say that they wouldn't be fair in their analysis, but that gives you an idea. Is it going to be fair? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it going to be fair when it comes to looking at Israel? A guy like Noam Chomsky doesn't have will read the New York Times from cover to cover, he says, because it's still worthwhile to do that. But he's not comfortable with how they cover places like Israel and Palestine.
Yeah.
Finkelstein, Gideon Levy, Elam Pepe, all these guys are Jewish guys that have a whole lot of problem with how the U.S. and the West covers these the wars and the Palestinian-Israeli question.
Yeah, and part of the challenge around that is that
Michael Peled, Gideon Levy, Finkelstein, Chomsky, Elam Pepe.
Yeah,
they go on and on. There's a lot of them. They have a big. These guys are Jewish guys that have a real big problem with Zionism and how the Israeli state is operating. I think we should listen to them.
Yeah, and I do. I'm listening to that because it's always been bothered me. It's always bothered me that we have this, essentially, when you consider what happened to the Jews in World War II, we now have a Jewish state that seems to be, pursuing the same type of policies, oppressing against Palestinians that have always lived in the area that they live in now.
Yeah, they're an ethno-religious group.
Yeah,
that doesn't like the other ethno-religious groups that used to live there
and still live there. The whole point is that in the land we call Israel, there isn't one. There's not even two ethno-religious groups. There's a multitude of them.
Well, that's the whole idea of Israel is to eradicate all the other ones.
Yeah.
Have just a ethno-religious group, Jewish ethno-religious group. And you can understand why, because of what's happened in Europe. They want a safe place to go. The only problem is they had to steal it from someone else. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to be solved. It's going to have to be
not easy.
Yeah. So the Jewish people are not going to leave Israel. Obviously, that's not going to happen. There's like 9 million of them there now.
Yeah.
Where are they going to go?
Yeah.
So they're going to stay right where they are. The problem is if they keep trying to eat up the lands that were supposed to be for the Palestinians, if they keep doing that, then there's continually going to be war. And there's going to be continually be anxiety. And if they don't come to some sort of solution, and now they're terrified of allowing a country, a Palestinian country in the West Bank, because that will always be hateful towards the Israelis who took away most of the land and give them back only 20%.
Yeah.
I don't know where this is going to end, but we can't leave it to guys like Netanyahu.
It's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. We can't leave it to guys like Netanyahu.
No, we need no interest in peace. We need somebody needs to step up internationally and get something done. And so far the only country that really has been South Africa.
Yeah, and Ireland. And look, every Netanyahu will produce a counter Netanyahu, like Yair Sinwar, right? Yair Sinwar and Netanyahu are the same persons. They just happen to be on either side, different sides of the fence. Yeah. And when you have extremists like that, then and you're never going to get a solution, because they're going to continue to roil things up. In any case, the whole idea of the rules of war, it says, Mike Cushman says, rules of war. Do you not find that statement rich? Yeah, I do. But the rules of war are supposed to disengage as much as possible the civilians of a country.
Yeah.
In other words, when you march into a country, you shoot the soldiers, but you try to not shoot the civilians. And that's
it's
not
hard when civilians.
That's not what's happening in Gaza now. They're killing everybody.
Well,
if they suspect that a flea that bit a Hamas guy is now on the shoulders of someone else in a tent, they'll blow the whole tent up to 20 people just to get the flea that once bit the Hamas guy.
Yeah. I know you're being cynical.
Yeah, because it drives me insane. Yeah. They think there might be a Hamas guy there. They'll wipe out the whole family.
Yeah. And in fact, and when you think about it, that goes against our philosophy that you're not guilty for the crimes of your father.
Yeah, I remember earlier in the war, they said a 2-to-1 ratio is acceptable, because that's what they had in the Second World War. If we killed 2 civilians for every combatant, that's acceptable. That's what happened in Iraq when the Americans went into Iraq and they fought in Fallujah. That 2 civilians died for every rebel. They've gone away from that argument now, because the amount of people that are being killed is insane. Yeah. You have 55,000 people killed, and that's the only ones they know about. And you have 120,000 people wounded and maimed.
I would have said that 2 civilian deaths to kill a combatant is out of order as well. Yeah. But that's mild compared to what's going on today.
Yeah, so it's like if like Yair Sinwar and his vicious goons killed 1,200 Israelis and then took 250 more captive. All right, so right now, what's happened? That the revenge for this now is 50 times.
Yeah,
they've killed 50 persons for every one killed by Yair and his vicious goons.
And that guy's no longer alive.
Right. Yeah, he's no longer alive, and he was a part of a terrorist organization. So the Israeli IDF is supposed to be a democratic, Western-leaning government, and it's sent its mechanized goons in there to kill tens of thousands of people, 55,000 people, and wound and maim 120,000 others. Tell me, don't you think they've got enough revenge?
Oh, yeah.
But that's not the point. They want to eradicate the people out of there. They want them out, and they want to push them out, and they hope that Donald Trump will help them do that. And I don't think, is too keen on that at this particular moment. But he's still not doing anything to stop it, which was very frustrating.
Yeah, because all he wants is his beachfront villa.
Yeah,
in Gaza.
If he said, "Stop the war, I'm going to do that right now," I would praise him, provided he didn't get rid of the Palestinians. If he left them there and helped them build a life and invested money in the beachfront properties, I would say, yeah, I'd be very happy with that. But he won't, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what do individual countries do? What is going to be their legacy after this is finally over, if it ever does get over? What will France say? What will Spain say? What will Britain say? What will Canada say when we are finally shown what has really happened in Gaza? We're going to all pretend that we didn't know. Is that what we're going to do?
Well,
are we going to all pretend we couldn't do anything? Is that what we're going to do? Well, we said something. We said, no, you're doing everything bad. Look at Biden. He kept putting red lines. Don't go into Rafah. Don't do this. Don't do that. The Israelis did everything they wanted to do, then slapped them around and say, give me more bombs. If you don't give me more bombs, I'm going to slap you around some more. And Biden, okay. And he gives them more bombs. And then he says, I'm going to build a wharf to bring in relief. Well, his wharf fell to pieces, didn't it?
Yeah, but right from the outset, both you and I condemned A, Hamas invasion, and B, the Israeli response.
Yeah, I denounced Yair Sinwar because he did exactly what Netanyahu wanted him to do.
Yeah, precisely.
I denounced Netanyahu because he lied about the security of the people there. When you can drive a front end loader up to a fence and rip it down and let your soldiers in and nobody notices. Yeah. Netanyahu said that they were safe. They weren't. And they watched them prepare for this. So part of me says they wanted this to happen so they could trounce the Gazans.
It's always been part of the plan, I think. Part of Netanyahu's plan has been to actually eradicate Gaza.
I think Netanyahu loved it. When Yair Sinwar came across the border with his goons, his vicious goons, Netanyahu loved it. That's exactly what I want to happen. Now I can come down on the Gazans with fury and hate, the hate that I've had for them for my whole life. And he's done that. And he'll do some more. And that's because the West has no stomach to face up to him. And that really, really bothers me. And I think we should move on to something else because I'm getting angry at the moment.
We are. I was just about to do that anyway. Mount Carmel Spiritual Center celebrates its 150th anniversary this year. The site as historical home to the Carmelite order has been a place of prayer, reflection, spiritual guidance for generations. And the main chapel, known for its monistic simplicity and stunning architecture, features wood carvings, massive statues of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and breathtaking stained glass windows imported from England. So they're 150 years old, should be celebrated.
Yeah, I've heard about the Carmelites. I'm glad the article is there because it's 150 years. Carmelites are here. I'm not a Catholic. I have no idea.
I never knew it was 150 years old, but I knew it was quite old.
Yeah. So the Carmelites themselves go back about 800 years, I believe.
You're probably right.
As a religious order.
Yeah.
And then they became a rather extremely influential here in the local churches. And they're an order that isn't it more focused on Catholic education, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Carmelites trace their origins back to the late 12th century and making them over 800 years old. The order was founded by Christian hermits who settled on Mount Carmel in the present-day Israel, inspired by Prophet Elijah. They later received the rule of life from Albert of Vercelli, Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem in 1209.
Well, so they have some very interesting roots there, of course. Sort of Catholic hermits on a mountain.
Yeah.
Well,
Our Lady of Mount Carmel has become their central identity, and Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church has been around as many cities around the globe that actually have the same church, same name church.
Well, it used to be the Church of St. Edward, and they've changed it to Our Lady of Peace. I don't know why they did that and why they kind of, I think St. Edward might not be too happy about that, but, you know, he's wherever he is, he's doing what he has to do. But in any case,
no longer with us, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I've never even heard of St. Edward, but then again, I'm not Catholic and I don't know about saints and stuff like that.
No, likewise. But basically, Carmelites transitioned from a hermetic lifestyle to a mendicant order spreading across Europe and beyond. And their devotion has become central to their identity. You know, they remain one of the most influential religious orders in the Catholic Church today.
Oh, it could be St. Edward the Confessor, who was the king prior to Harold, who got beat up by William the Conqueror.
Oh, could be.
Yeah, could be that.
Yeah.
In any case,
yeah,
it was just I put it there for just because it's part of the area's history.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Apparently,
much.
Apparently, the Carmelites. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it very much is a part of our history here in Niagara Falls. That it's a very much a spiritual retreat. A lot of people go there.
Yeah, it's even. It says here that even other faiths come for conventions and things like that and use the facilities.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the Lutherans and the Baptists and so on or other. It says so here in the article, which ones do. But anyway, it's just a part of the history of the city, which that's why I put it up there. It's the Carmelites came here after they had been German priests were sent from Germany to attend to the faith of German Catholics in Kansas originally, and then they wanted to expand, and they came into Buffalo and New York, and the parish priests there and the bishops there said, "Look, we have a whole lot of priests here, but where they don't have as many is right over there on the other side of the river," and that's why they came to Niagara Falls, Ontario, and they got a nice piece of property overlooking the Rainbow Falls too. That's cool.
Yeah. And actually what they've made of it is great. You know, it's good. You know, like it. I like it.
Anyway, it was just some kind of history there, and an interesting part of Niagara Falls' history.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Moving on. Carney is saying that Canada is going to meet its 2% NATO spending target this financial year. So by March of next year, by March of 2026.
I have to celebrate. When I saw that, I thought to myself, finally. Well, one of the big.
Yeah.
Finally,
we've been talking about this as being a commitment. How long has this been going on? Trump put this up on the table on his first term, didn't he?
Well, this has been going on ever since Harper's term. Way back then. What happened was everybody reduced the amount of, and it wasn't just Canada, but most countries reduced the amount of money going into their defense, including the United States. When the United States was attacked on 9/11, they reversed that. They started to increase their defense spending, but no other country did.
Yeah.
So every country lagged back on that 2%. And as I've said before, every Western country is in love with being in debt. And when you're in love with being in debt, you're going to look for places to cut. And quite often it was the defense in Germany and France and, well, maybe not France, but most other Western countries, including Canada.
No, not even France. I believe France is about 1.9 something percent. But UK is about 1.7 odd percent. And because I looked at this about 3-4 months ago, right, and we're all woefully short on that 2% GDP mark.
Yeah, that was a minimum, and we couldn't even meet the minimum of 2%. Well, now we see, and Harper snubbed it, Trudeau snubbed it, and Trudeau snubbed it in a big way. He didn't really want to do that. He was kind of forced to do it by Trump, and said, okay, we'll do it by 2035 or some darn thing like that. Well, Carney's come in and he's saying quite clearly he can see what's happening in the world today.
Yeah.
The world is a much more aggressive place. It is very uncertain, and we cannot depend on the United States like we used to.
Yeah.
We in fact, it was stupid to lean on them in the beginning. We always felt, well, they're going to have our back, so we don't have to do anything. They'll take care of us. Well, Carney's saying, no, the world has changed, and we should have been stepping up to the plate, and we are going to step up the plate, and we're going to do it in a fast and quick way. Yeah. Well, congratulations. Everybody else said it couldn't be done. He says it can be done. Do you notice that? Do you notice that with Carney, all in all, though? He's saying this can be done, and that can be done, and this can be done. Whereas just the other liberal regime before, this can't be done because there's environmental problems. This can't be done because there's expense problems. This can't be done. We can't fix the military. We can't do this. We can't do that. It takes time. But Carney all the time just says it can be done and will be done.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's telling the truth, but it sure sounds good.
Yeah. And it's a whole different breath of fresh air in a way.
Yeah, it's based on practicality. It's based on common sense.
Yeah.
Pretty much he stole everything from the Conservative Party and is and using it.
Yeah, I know. And I was thinking that myself, is that, hey, this is actually, but even Polyev didn't say by the end of the year. He was talking about within 5 years.
Yeah. So
reaching the 2% within 5 years. So clearly Carney has figured out something.
Like the best way to avoid war is to prepare for war. Yeah. That's been, you can go back to ancient times. If you want to avoid a war, you prepare for a war. Because your enemies know that you're strong, they're not going to attack you. Right? But if they see weakness, they're going to attack. And that's what Russia did against the West when it invaded Ukraine. It knew it could get away with it. It knew the West wouldn't face up to it. What's happening in Gaza too? Like Israel knows that the West hasn't got the stomach to stop it from doing the atrocities that it's doing right now. So, and China's looking at Taiwan. Look what China did with the Uyghurs. It knew the West didn't have the backbone to step up and say anything. So right now we have to change our attitude. We have to look like we're really, really strong, and we have to protect ourselves, and we can't rely on the United States to do that. So my hat's off to Carney. I hope he can get it done.
But again, for one of the things that we have for the Atlantic side, we have the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but for the Pacific, we don't have such an organization.
Yeah, there is. There's SWATO or something like that. The South Asian organization, or SWATO, something. There is something similar, not as complete, but it is similar to it.
Yeah,
I'll have to look it up.
But it's not thought of in what I'm saying. Sorry, I think I stated it. There is an organization, but it's not thought of immediately. You can't even remember the name. That clearly says that it's not. It's not. You see, you can remember the name NATO. Bang, bang, bang. It's on the top of your head, right? Europe, NATO, North America, NATO. It's our defense organization, always has been. We don't have to stretch our mind to think about it, whereas the Pacific Rim, we do.
Yeah. Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. That is Seattle or
Seattle.
Seato, SEATO. So I knew it was out there, and it says here, is Seato still active? That the organization was held as final exercise on February 20th, 1976, and formally ended in June 1977. So it was there. It was not there now.
Yeah, it's dead, right? Exactly my point. There is no Pacific Rim organization that is standing for the defense and would be standing up against Chinese aggression, for example.
Well, we do have the Philippines, we have Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, South Korea. Isn't there some sort of what they call Pacific Rim treaties?
Yeah.
I know we tried to have an extensive trade deal with all the Pacific Rim countries, excluding China. I don't know how well that worked, but I don't know how much. Well, we have the Five Eyes and other kind of treaties of some sort, but yeah.
Well, there is a Pacific Rim Treaty, but that is a Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah. I don't know how much of that has to deal with defense and security and how much it has to do with trade.
Yeah.
Well, this seems to be more of a learning exercise today than anything.
No, and for example, the US is not within the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Well, that's right, because Hillary Clinton pulled out of it. She said if she was going to be the president, she was going to get in it. But there was a lot of resistance to it, a whole lot of resistance to it. So she backed out of it, but she didn't become president anyway, so it didn't make a difference. Trump wasn't going to be part of it.
Yeah.
But because she started that way and got a whole lot of resistance, she had to back out of it, which was a disappointment for the countries like Canada and Australia and New Zealand and Japan and so on. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Basically, the countries that are in the TPP are Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam.
Even Vietnam, yeah. See, Vietnam is always edgy about China. Vietnam, they feel threats from Vietnam, from China more than probably we do. So they're very, very careful about China.
But it is more a trade agreement than it is a defense organization.
Yes, and diplomatic as well. Anyway, so the 2% that Carney is proposing and getting done, like there's a guy. Everybody else said no, can't be done. And he says, yes, it can be done. And I hope he's right.
Yeah.
I hope he's right.
The
he
only
also
other
says it can be done. Interprovincial trade can happen. We can drop the barriers between provinces to get trade done, and he's doing it. I hope he's successful.
Yeah. Well, we need it. We need it. Okay. The other one, by the way, is ANZUS, ANZUS Treaty, which is a collective security agreement between Australia, New Zealand, and the US, signed in 1951.
Yeah.
Of which Canada is not part of.
Yes. Well, when Britain became weak after 2 world wars, the Aussies and the Kiwis had to find an ally.
Yeah.
And of course, the obvious one was the United States, because it was the burgeoning power at the time. But they still have to be very careful. I think probably the United States will see them more important allies than NATO, because they feel the major threats coming are going to be the ones from China. However, the NATO countries are still under threat from Russia, and a Russia that's backed by China. So I can kind of see that the United States is going to turn its focus towards China and try to contain China in the Pacific. And maybe it's up to us and the rest of NATO to contain Russia in Europe, because the United States can't do everything.
Yeah. All right, moving. Unless there's anything else to say on that.
No, I just happy that he said it was going to be done. We'll see if it can be done. That's the next thing. Where's the money going to come from? That's the big question.
Yeah, always the eternal question, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so
I'm glad it's being done, because obviously we have enemies out there, and we have to show them that we have resolve and military strength, and that if you carry a big stick, the other person with a stick is less likely to fight you, because they're going to get hurt too. So I think that's very important, to make it very clear to everyone that we have the military wherewithal, and that is probably going to be the deterrent that brings peace. But once one side's weaker than the other, then that's the problem.
Yeah. The worry I have about the Pacific Rim, the ANZUS Treaty, is that it's based about Australia, New Zealand, and the US, not so much those, like the trade organization there, would, if that were actually a peace treaty, that would be better, a peace organization that would be better, more secure.
I don't know. They right now they're probably trying to contain China as long as it takes for Xi Jinping to be either die or get removed from office. Xi Jinping is a dictator, and he has certain goals, and until those goals, until his administration in China is changed, we have real threats of a war that would take over Taiwan, and Taiwan we
need to get ourselves updated about Taiwan again, Dave.
Yes, well, we know that Christian Bell knows a lot more than we do on these things,
and a lot of. Well, I was going to suggest that, because one of the things that has been worrying me with the Pacific Rim is been there was a point at which the Chinese have more or less suggested at one point by 2050 that the Chinese will retake Taiwan, but those things, Xi Jinping was actually saying that's going to be as early as 2035.
Well, 2027, he said he wanted to take Taiwan.
Yeah, and then he's been changing that again. Yeah.
And so it is a long story there. And China wants Taiwan. It does. But the rest of the world, that would be a problem because Taiwan makes the most advanced chips in the world. If they are taken over by China, then China will hold the rest of the world by the so that's a big problem there. And until we begin to source our own chips in a more safer place, Taiwan is very important to us. So we can't let China take it. The other problem, of course, is that Xi Jinping is a dictator for life, and he's made the CPP his own little personal fiefdom, very much like Stalin did to the USSR, and how Mao did it as well. He keeps everybody in tow. They have to support him, or else they're gone. But there is opposition in China, and so Xi Jinping has to be very, very careful. He can't lose. So if he does go to fight Taiwan and he loses that battle, then he's gone. So that's probably the only thing that's saving Taiwan now from invasion. And obviously we have to up our game here in Canada to make sure that we look like a very unattractive place to invade. And our friends are very unattractive to invade because we'll be backing them up. But the United States has to shift its focus to the east. And I think we kind of understand that. It'll be a lot better when Trump is out of office because it'll be a little bit more clear what's going on there. Trump likes confusion and nobody knows what's happening defensively. When he's out of office and things become a little bit more clearly stated.
4.5 years, Dave.
Well, he's down to about 3.5 now, isn't he?
Sorry, I meant 3.5 years. Yep, sorry. That was my slip of the tongue. Yep, thank you for correcting me. Yeah, 3.5 years, Dave, is what I meant to say. Yeah.
Well, the people that's around him may work against him. We've seen what's happened to Elon Musk. Has turned his back on Trump. We don't know what the other Republicans are doing now, scheming behind Trump's back. We don't know. So that may be a factor moving forward.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's move on. Niagara Health is announcing its urgent care center summer schedule, and apparently there are closures to preserve the 24/7 emergency operations at Niagara Falls, Welland, and St. Catharines, but there are going to be closures at Fort Erie and Port Coburn due to a critical physician shortage. And these closures are going to be happening between July and September on Fridays.
Yes. Well, my mom right now is in the down at Port Colborne, but it won't affect her. In the Port Colborne hospital, when I was there, it looked like there was a lot of therapy and post-operative stuff happening there, and stuff like that happening there. I don't see ambulances pulling up there or anything like that. So it is a care facility, but it isn't like an emergency care facility.
Yeah, the urgent cares, remember, Fort Erie and Port Coburn urgent care centers are only daytime, I think 8 a.m. till 6 p.m.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like, to me when I was there in Port Coburn, it doesn't look like a whole lot of standard kind of care is happening there. It's more like
long-term care
type of things,
Yeah, long-term care.
Yeah. So my mom is there to get therapy and to kind of strengthen herself after being in the hospital.
She's there for planned treatment, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So she comes and she goes. right? And it's all planned during the daytime.
Yeah. Hers is a therapy and assessment.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas the urgent care facilities have been, when you think about it, urgent care has been on the urgent care facilities have been cut in both Fort Erie and Port Colborne for quite some time. The thing that is different about this and was about 5 years ago is that now Welland is being kept. Welland Hospital seems to be being kept.
The whole point of this article is that because of staffing issues, they're going to have to reduce the hours. Whatever hours they do have already in Fort Erie and Port Colborne, they have to reduce those hours because of staffing shortages. Yeah. So they don't have enough nurses, don't have enough doctors. So they're going to have to reduce their services. That's pretty sad, but that's the point of the article, really.
And the Marotta Family Hospital in St. Catharines, formerly known as the St. Catharines General Hospital, has also been affected by staff shortages, as has the Niagara Falls Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we got staff shortages all around.
Yeah, and that's and there's nothing new about that. And of course, the hospitals on the edge, the periphery, the ones in the smaller communities like Fort Erie and Port Colborne, of course, are going to feel it more.
Yeah,
because any staffing shortages will happen there. If they have to take staff from there and put them into hospitals in St. Catharines or Niagara Falls or Welland, that's what they'll do.
Yeah, they have a press conference about this in Fort Erie Town Hall tomorrow, 1 p.m.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. We know Wayne Gates will probably be there.
Probably.
Yeah, he's been a proponent for keeping those urgent care centers open.
And I know he has, and credit to him. But the thing about the urgent care centers is that if we don't have the doctors, how the hell are we going to support them?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, keeping them open is one thing, keeping them staffed is another.
Yeah. And I'm all in favor of keeping them open, but if we don't have the doctors, how the hell are we going to do that?
Yeah.
Right. And we don't have the doctors. And the point being is that, places like St. Catharines and Niagara Falls kind of need, and I'm not trying to be elitist here, but as it naturally happens with these, is places like St. Catharines and Niagara Falls tend to get those doctors first, don't they?
Yeah, bigger cities always do that, but even then, it's a problem. Look at the kind of incentives that Welland and St. Catharines and Niagara Falls are trying to. They're really dangling the carrot in front of as many doctors as they can, and that whole idea that John Ringo Beam had made us aware of, where there is going to be a clinic all paid for, where the doctors don't have to put up any of their own money to get an office, to get a staff, or anything like that. They walk into an office that's already there. It's for them. It's being paid for. And all they have to do is walk in, turnkey operation, and start doing their doctoring rather than have to do all the other stuff that's involved with like staffing issues, getting computers, getting filing cabinets, whatever else they have to do. It's all done. Yeah. And so those are part of the incentives. And anyway, I think we're pretty well done here. It's 8:06.
Yeah, you're right. We're done.
And I would just like to say to everyone, have a great day. Have a great Tuesday. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Don't forget about Gaza. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye.